All right, we are going to pick up our next chapter, which is chapter 11 in our book, which is intelligence. So intelligence is a kind of a controversial subject in the field of psychology and just kind of in life, because what exactly is intelligence? You know, there's always this kind of mystery surrounding what do we mean when we say intelligence? How do you go about testing it? So right now, we use intelligence tests as our predominantly way of kind of defining intelligence. And what are they? Well, they're basically just a series of questions and other exercises which attempt to assess people's mental ability in a way that generates some kind of a numerical score so that you can be compared to another person. Okay, so there's lots of different types of intelligence tests out there. And we'll talk about some of the specifics and look at some of those later. But basically, an intelligence test is any way that we're trying to assess your mental ability. And so then what is intelligence? Well, intelligence can be defined as whatever intelligence test measure. If we look in our book, our technical definition from our book is the mental quality consisting of the ability to learn from experience, to solve problems, and to use knowledge to adapt to new situations. So that's kind of the textbook's definition. However, the field of psychology is kind of changing in its understanding of intelligence, and we're now kind of realizing that really intelligence is just whatever the intelligence test that you happen to be taking at that time is measuring. For instance, the SATs, your college entrance test, measures how good you are at scoring well on that particular test. And those of you that have taken both the ACT and the SAT, might have noticed that you had a huge difference. Some of you might have scored much higher on the ACT than you did on the SAT, or vice versa. But so does that mean that your intelligence was lower one day, or what kind of factors play into why one test you did better and one test you did worse? Okay, and well, really, it's because you were more intelligent for whatever that one particular test was testing. What does that mean about your overall intelligence level? Well, that's what we're going to kind of be talking about this unit. We're going to be looking at some of these factors and the intricacies of what it means to be intelligent. Now, one of the biggest questions in the field of intelligence and studying the intelligence is it one general ability or is it several specific abilities? And over the years, people who have studied and focused in on intelligence have kind of changed their minds. Charles Spearman was one of the first to kind of come in, and he said, we all have this underlying general intelligence, which he kind of denoted as this little g, you'll see. And then along came a guy named Howard Gardner, who kind of said that, well, no, we have these 8 different intelligences. And then Robert Sternberg, who said, well, 8 might be too much, maybe we only have 3. So there's been lots of different theories about what intelligence is, how many intelligences we have, and then most recently people have been studying this idea of emotional intelligence. Well, great, sure, you're book smart, cool, but what about interacting with people? What about using your emotions? Does that play a role in being intelligent? So we've been starting to study something we call EQ, or emotional intelligence. So going back to the beginning, this general intelligence, otherwise denoted as kind of little g, was a guy named Charles Spearman. Okay, so name to know, Charles Spearman, who performed a factor analysis of different skills and found that people who did well in one area also did well in another. So he speculated that these people have what he called a high G, or a general intelligence. So basically his idea was that we all have this G level. Some of ours are higher, some of ours are lower, and this is kind of our jumping off point for what our abilities are going to be. If you have a high G, chances are you're going to do really well in life. If you have a lower G, it means that, well, maybe you'll do well in some areas, but overall you're probably going to, have a lower intelligence level. So factor analysis is an important word to know, or term to know, and basically it is a statistical technique that determines how different variables relate to each other. For example, whether they form clusters that tend to vary together. So factor analysis is what we use on intelligence tests. You're also going to see it again when we talk about personality tests. And it's basically a stat thing. And it just tells us how do things relate. And it allows statisticians, and psychologists use a lot of statistics, it allows us to go in and figure out where relationships exist on a mathematical level, and to do all that more than chance kind of stuff that all you stats people know, and then the rest of you we will talk about later. Okay, so just to make sure, Charles Spearman, okay, little g, general underlying kind of your base level intelligence, and he used factor analysis, which is a way of determining how variables relate to each other. So multiple intelligence kind of came about, and this is more recent, after studying people who have what's called savant syndrome. And savant syndrome refers to have isolated islands of high ability among a sea of below average cognitive and social functioning. Now, we see savant syndrome oftentimes with people who have some kind of impairment, autism, mental retardation, those kinds of things, where they have a very, very low functioning level, but they have these amazing abilities, okay, in one way, shape, or form. So maybe it's musical, maybe it's mathematical abilities, maybe it's artistic abilities. And in class, we're going to take a look at some of these people, and you'll get to see firsthand what some of their abilities are. But savant syndrome got intelligent researchers starting to think about this idea of, well, how does that happen? How can somebody be super low in most areas but have one or two like off the charts, out of this world intelligence level? And so a guy named Howard Gardner came up with what he called his multiple intelligences. And basically, he said that different people have different intelligence or ability areas. And research and factor analysis suggests that there may be a correlation among these intelligences. So what are the intelligences? Well, he talked about linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, intrapersonal and interpersonal, and then naturalistic. So he said we all have these 8. Okay, everybody has them, but some of us are just better than others at certain things. Now, this got a lot of attention in education because we started to kind of look at this idea and say, well, maybe not every kid learns the same, and also maybe not every kid kind of demonstrates their knowledge the same way. So, if you have a bodily kinesthetic kid, they're not going to learn well sitting in class listening to lectures. They need to get up and do. So why don't we let them present? Why don't we let them be interactive? Why don't we let them do things that allow them to learn with the movement? So it carried over. And in class, we're going to take a Gardner's multiple intelligence test to help you guys identify what yours is. And we'll talk about a little bit more in detail some of the dynamics of this. And then Robert Sternberg kind of piggybacked off of Gardner and agreed that, yeah, we have this idea, there's this multiple kind of thing, but he said 8 was too much. So he came up with what he called an intelligence triarchy. And he proposed that success in life is related to 3 types of ability. Okay, practical intelligence, expertise and talent that help to complete the tasks and manage the complex challenges of everyday life. Okay, like time management skills, being practical, knowing what you can take on, knowing what you can't take on. Okay, analytical intelligence, solving a well-defined problem with a single answer. So this is more book smarts kind of stuff, math, science, history, can you figure out the answer to things, test-taking skills. Okay, and then creative intelligence, generating new ideas to help adapt to novel situations. Okay, and this one's an important one because, we all know those people that are super, super intelligent, or smart, I should say, I shouldn't use the word intelligent, super, super smart, they can memorize, they can do math, but yet they get lost coming home from school. Okay, so, practical and creative are important aspects of intelligence, because if we look at some of the people that we deem the most intelligent in the world, they also are the people that have created the most important things, be it in science or math or, in engineering, and in those arenas as well. So Sternberg kind of, again, had this idea of 3 types of abilities, and said that, people who are strong in all 3 of these are the most intelligent. Now, something I want to point out as we wrap up is that notice that intelligence, when we've been talking about intelligence, nowhere do you hear book smarts, right? Nowhere is it your ability to, take tests. Nowhere is it your ability, to do well in school. Okay, and that's one of the things where intelligence today is moving away from, is that we're realizing that sometimes how we test intelligence, the things that we assume, demonstrate our intelligence aren't always as accurate as we think they are. So some of the things that we're going to be doing in this unit are going to be talking about and demonstrating the fact that there is multiple ways of demonstrating what your intelligence level is. All right, so next time we are going to pick up talking about creativity and emotional intelligence.